Welcome, welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. Pleasure to be here with everyone today on International Women's Day. We're going to give a couple seconds for everyone to jump in. You know, as we're waiting for everyone to jump in, every day is Women's Day at WCS. Every day is International Women's Day. This is the standard for us, but we want to acknowledge all these amazing, powerful individuals that are on this call today to come learn about mastering executive presence. We have an amazing topic and workshop put together for everybody that's entering in the room right now. And so let's get to the next slide. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm Sarah Fuentes, Chairwoman of Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. This is one of my all-time most favorite things to do, which I call a labor of love, is being here today with everyone here. Today, we're here to have an amazing conversation about executive presence. Here's a quick snapshot of the agenda. First, we're going to get into, we're going to introduce you to our corporate sponsor, and then we're going to get into the actual meat of today's workshop with Guts and Greats leader, Leanne Mallory. And then we're going to get into some breakout sessions today, and we're going to have an opportunity to have real engagement with everybody on the call. So don't leave out after the breakout sessions. Make sure that you stay for the engagement at the end with the Q&A with our panelists or with our workshop leader today. Next slide. Just a little bit about Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. We have been a nonprofit organization, an international organization, and our focus is to support women and men in the green economy. We do this in many facets, and many of you may know about a lot of our programs, but we do have in-person and virtual events. We also have a mentorship program that maybe we have some of our mentees and mentors on the line, and if you are one of those people, hey, raise your hand, let us know who you are. We also have an entrepreneurship program, which is a amazing program. So any entrepreneurs in the room, like myself or some other ladies that I see have already popped in, make sure you tap into this program. It's an amazing program to stay connected with other like-minded entrepreneurs. And then we also have our annual WCS Talks, which is an amazing conference that we already completed already at the beginning of this year. And so these are just a little bit about us. We are an international organization, and we have members from here to Europe. And so definitely want to make sure that everybody in this room stays connected. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we do in-person and virtual events, and here's some upcoming events that we have. For the San Francisco Bay Area, we have a Pioneers Social on March 27th. We are also participating in this conference. On March 29th, we are having a panel. The Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability is also having a panel within their conference on March 29th. On April 11th, we're having a members only meeting to connect with myself as the new chairwoman. And then April 21st, we're kicking off a hike with SF Climate Week. And then April 26th, as I mentioned about the entrepreneurship program, this will be the entrepreneurship program's first meeting on April 26th. So if you want to sign up, you still have some time. Next slide. All right. So as I mentioned, that we are now kicking off our professional development workshop, and I'm going to introduce you to Pam in a minute. And this is just our schedule for the year. So if you're interested in attending more of these types of events after you have a great experience today, I'm pretty sure you're going to want to attend again. And these are the dates. So please make sure that you save these dates. March 8th, obviously, is today. May 17th, identifying and leveraging transferable skills for a sustainable career. August 9th, planning and executing an ESG plan. And October 11th, accelerating sustainability strategies using artificial intelligence. These are some very timely things, so please make sure that you save the date and follow back up for more information about these workshops that we have planned for the year. Super amazing stuff. I love these topics, by the way. Next slide. Many of us have been in Zoom world, but just out of just common reminder and friendly reminder to everybody in the room, remember to stay unmuted when it's appropriate. Please make sure if your full name is not typed in right now, please update that for networking purposes so we can connect with you on LinkedIn. It's critical. We love telling everybody to make connections here. So having your LinkedIn connection and dropping that in the chat is really what we want to see happen so everybody can make those types of connections. And most importantly, please be respectful and be an active and present listener. Next slide. So some of you may have just came just because one of our members may have referred this event to you. We are a membership organization, and these are just some of the benefits of being a member. I've been a member of this organization over 13 years, and I could just share with you that I wouldn't keep coming back if I didn't see the value. And I could spend all day talking to you about that, but I'm not going to do that because I want Leanne and Pam to have the show. Next slide. But our organization is comprised of individual members and corporate members. These corporate members, maybe your company could be a company that may or may not be one of our corporate members. But if your company is interested or you want your company to be one of our members, please share the slide with them or reach out to myself or Pam or Kirpa or one of the board members. If we have any board members on the call, please put a heart up there for so anybody else can know, hey, we could reach out to you and talk about corporate membership if your company's interested in working with us. And then once again, these are just some of the benefits to being a corporate member with Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. Next slide. Well, these two slides are my favorite slides because I get to introduce some of my favorite people. I've actually had the privilege of doing a workshop and a retreat with Leanne, and you are in for a treat. Leanne is the founder of Guts and Grace, and she began her career as an executive coach in 2006. And working with women is something that she's extremely passionate about, and she's taken on a journey through being a coach. And so we're excited to have her here today. Leanne specializes in bringing the feminine wisdom and diverse culture into business. And today we get the opportunity to have her lead us through this executive presence workshop. So thank you, Leanne, so much for being here today. And I'm not going to take too much of your thunder because we're going to hear from you later. The next person I have the opportunity of introducing to you is one of my dear friends and fellow board members and the co-chair. Sorry, I just have to gas you up because it's just so exciting to introduce you. I don't always get to introduce you ladies. So Pam is also the co-chair of the Career Development Committee at Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. I could sit here and talk nothing but great things about Pam all day long, and she has so many accolades. But to be quite candid, the thing that I'm just very fortunate to have her on our team is her years of experience in working with people to help them in their career and giving them the track to do so and being so passionate and insightful. And so with that being said, I have the opportunity to pass the mic over to my good friend, Pam. Pam, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Sarah. Boy, we have just so much to celebrate today and an exciting program for you. So I'll say good day, no matter where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today as we embark upon a journey to unleash the power of executive presence and empower women for success. Today's workshop is particularly significant as we celebrate International Women's Day, March 8th, a day to recognize the achievements of women worldwide and to reaffirm our commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment. In today's competitive business landscape, executive presence plays a pivotal role in determining one's success. It's more than just about how we look or speak. It's about projecting confidence, credibility, and authenticity in every interaction. Research has shown that individuals with strong executive presence are more likely to be perceived as leaders, advance in their careers, and make a lasting impact. Despite the progress we've made, there still exists a gender gap when it comes to executive presence and leadership opportunities. Women in particular often face unique challenges in navigating corporate environments and asserting their presence with confidence. However, this workshop is not about dwelling on the challenges, but about equipping you with the tools and skills to overcome them. In my role as the board officer for WCS's career development function, we set our goals for our community to elevate, empower, and inspire women to thrive and achieve your highest potential in the workplace and elevate the visibility of your leadership status. We do that as our career development team works to support our community for WCS. We explore the challenges, we bring great skill building programs for you. You're learning the skills, tools in the toolbox to amplify your impact in the workplace. We foster a supportive work environment where women can network, share experiences, and empower one another. So through Leanne's workshop today, we will adopt a hands-on and interactive approach. We will engage in discussions and activities to deepen your understanding and practice our new skills. This is a safe place for you to ask questions, share insights, and challenge yourself to grow. From my personal career success, starting as a young woman leader over 35 years ago, my words of wisdom for you are this. It never occurred to me that I couldn't accomplish what I set my mind to. And that's the resiliency, the courage, and the strength, and the credibility and capability that I bring in my WCS role and in my company, Green Training Associates. In conclusion, today's workshop is not just about developing executive presence. It's about empowering each and every one of you to step forward with your full potential as leaders. Together, let's celebrate the achievements of women, challenge the status quo, and create a more inclusive and equitable world for future generations. Thank you once again for joining us. Let's make today's workshop a truly transformative experience. So we have two brief sponsor messages that I'd like to introduce, and then we're going to turn the stage over to Leanne for the delivery of the learning experience. I'll see you on the other side for the Q&A and closing remarks, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way. So allow me to thank and introduce Sydney Miller, who is the representative, our champion corporate sponsor from First Solar. So Sydney Miller is a workforce development specialist too. She's with the business and she's going to share her messages and her story as First Solar's representative today. And we so appreciate WCS as First Solar has this champion corporate sponsor. And many of you are here celebrating this program and topic with us. So Sydney, allow me to introduce you.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Like she said, my name is Sydney Miller, and I have had the pleasure of working as a workforce development specialist with First Solar over this past year. During that time, I've been able to see endless avenues of innovation, collaboration, and empowerment. For those of you who may not know who First Solar is, we are a leading American solar technology company and a global provider of responsibly produced eco-efficient solar modules. We are the largest US-based solar photovoltaic manufacturer, and as a company, we have made significant strides in recent years, but this year marks a special milestone for us. We're celebrating 25 years from first being founded in 1999. So here are just a few of the many highlights of what we've accomplished over those years. We are projected to reach 100% renewable energy power by 2028. We've shipped over to 45 countries, achieved over 90% recycling rate, and we've increased women in management by over 4% since 2021 alone. From raw material sourcing and manufacturing, all the way through the end of life module recycling, First Solar believes in responsible solar. We've established benchmarks in recycling, responsible supply chain management, transparency, as well as the carbon and water footprint of our technology. Our sustainability report highlights many of these accomplishments I just mentioned, including our Women's Network GLOW. Within our GLOW program, we've empowered female identifying employees to grow their careers, support other women within the workplace, and promote diversity, equality, and inclusion within the company, as well as making a positive impact on our communities. With all that being said, I'm excited to be part of what First Solar has in store for our future, as well as I'm so glad to be here today to learn more with all of you on this International Women's Day.
Thank you, Sydney, and to all the First Solar employees that are joining us and everyone on the call today. So allow me then to introduce Leanne Mallory without further ado as the CEO of Guts and Grace Leadership, who is not only, Leanne is our speaker, and she is also our event sponsor. So she has some key messages to deliver about Guts and Grace Leadership, and then we'll dive into the learning experience. Leanne?
Thank you, Pam. As Pam mentioned, I am the CEO of Guts and Grace Leadership. You'll hear from me more in a minute as our speaker, but as the sponsor of this event. Guts and Grace Leadership is a coaching, training, and consulting firm that helps companies retain, advance, and activate female and diverse leaders in order to promote organic, employee-driven innovation. We use tools like mindfulness, neuroscience, positive psychology, and others to help high potential and at-risk leaders understand and end the internalized and unconscious bias that drives burnout and prevent them from bringing their full selves to work. Our mission at Guts and Grace is to steward the evolution of business by supporting forward-thinking women and diverse leaders in all sectors to achieve more senior levels of leadership, to bring their big ideas forward and to bring their most impactful selves to work. And our company's purpose is to bring the magic back. Our services at Guts and Grace include things like executive coaching for sure, but also we offer a number of special longer-term training programs like our year-long Guts and Grace Mastermind program and group coaching programs. We also offer internal programs for organizations, for high potentials, and for teams. And as Sarah mentioned, we run retreats and summits, which some WCX folks have been to before. So if you'd like to keep in touch with us, we have a QR code here you can scan to get a couple of free guided embodiment and meditation practices. I encourage you to pick those up. They'll help you with some of what we're going to do. Come back to that later. You can also follow us on social, check out our website, gutsandgrace.com, and or get in touch via the links I'm going to place in the chat right now. We would love to be one of your go-to resources for women's leadership training and coaching in 2024.
Thank you, Leanne. And allow me to then continue on with our workshop experience and breakout sessions. Leanne, I'm going to stop sharing now and take it away for our learning experience.
All right, hopefully you all can see my screen. I'm going to take off my official sponsor hat and put on my, I hope, more fun speaker hat. It is a pleasure to be with you all here. As has already been said a number of times, I'm Leanne, and I am here to be with you in a conversation and a training experience around executive presence. We've called this session Own the Room, Master Your Executive Presence. And what I can say right up front is that this is one of the most fun, one of the most tricky, one of the most complicated topics that I present on, hands down. It is one of the most, I think, in some ways, simple things to master, and also one of the most difficult things to master as a leader in the workplace. And so I am delighted to be here to unpack as much as we can about this topic in 40 minutes. Really, we could spend days and days together, and there'd still be more to unravel. So we're going to dive in, and I'll let you know a little bit about what our intentions are for this time that we have together. So a couple of today's goals, as I said, to unpack what it means to own the room, both with your language, with what you may have to say, but also, and in particular, in your physical, mental, and emotional presence. What does that mean? We'll come back to that shortly. During the session, you're going to learn some new skills for centering and for communication that I believe will set you apart from other leaders in your industry. Most folks have just kind of a scratch the surface knowledge of what it means. Often we get feedback on executive presence, and it can mean 10 or 20 different things. So we're going to start to give you the tools to really understand it for yourself and be able to practice on your own to find your own way to this very important but sometimes elusive skill. And we will leave you with at least one concrete new practice that you can take home that will immediately raise the ceiling on your leadership. These are big promises. I realize that. Of course, anything that you learn here today is only valuable if you do it. So I invite you to both practice in the moment with us here. We have some opportunities to practice, and also to take it home with you and to also leverage the resources we're going to share afterwards. So why be in this conversation about executive presence? Sarah had mentioned to us this morning, this is one of the most highly signed up for and attended sessions that WCS has had in a while. And I think it's because this topic is it's like, what's happening here? It grates on us. Like, we actually want to be able to speak up, to bring our voices forward. And yet at the same time, we're aware of what happens in the workplace. Maybe you're here because you're tired of hearing that men advance more quickly inside of companies, get more venture capital funding, hold more seats on boards, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe you're here because you are the only woman on your team, or you're the only person on your team who holds the kind of vision that you hold, and you want to be able to have the presence and wield the kind of followership and listenership that helps you bring that big vision forward and be heard. And you have a hunch that something about executive presence might be part of the key to unlock that. So whether you're here because you're tired of them winning, quote unquote, or you're here because you want to win more in your own way, you're in the right place. You might think about other reasons that came here. Perhaps, again, you have a vision that you want to share, but sometimes you struggle to feel heard. Maybe you're tired of being in meetings where somebody says what you just said and gets the credit, especially if they happen to be in a male body. Perhaps you are successful and you want to influence, but also you don't want to be seen as too pushy. You don't want to be seen as too aggressive. So how do I strike the right balance, for example? Or maybe your organization is focused on elevating women leaders and you're just looking for some new tools. Or maybe you've been in your role for a while, you're already really good at what you do, but you still have a sense that there's a possibility of leveling up in some way. So again, if these are some of the things that are on your mind, you are in the right place. We'd love to hear from you though. So take a moment, if you're willing, and share with us in the chat, what is one of the reasons that you came here? Either perhaps you're here because there's something you struggle with, so you might share a challenge in the chat, or perhaps you're here because there's something that you want to learn. So you could put what I want or what I most want to learn is, and then as people are responding here, I want to invite you all to just take a look at the chat and see what you're seeing, because most likely you are not alone. Perhaps, in fact, there are other people who have the same challenges as you or are here for the same kinds of reasons. So if folks are willing to share, we'd love to hear. Valerie jumps right in and says, I want to get better at advocating for myself 100%, Anna, not taken seriously. I'm sure this chat will start moving faster than I can read it, but just to speak a few, I struggle with advocating, sharper in the moment communication skills, performance feedback has executive presence and temper my reactions 100%. Ensuring that the message to executives are meeting their expectations, I can express confidence in the moments. So if you're still typing, continue typing. And again, just kind of check out what other people have to say here. This is a really great opportunity to not just learn, but also to normalize the fact that there's something to learn here. So many of us have something in the ballpark of this theme that we're grappling with, or that we're getting feedback on, or that we're not getting feedback on, that we think we'd like to hone and refine. I want to tell you a little bit about what brings me, or what brought me to this conversation. So here's just a little bit of my own story so that you also know that I have been and continue to be in my own reflection, my own growth around this topic with you. So I didn't start out my career as a polished speaker, as someone who felt very confident. I think Pam said something a little earlier, like she knew that she could always do anything she wanted to do. I may have been the opposite in some ways. I really came into the workplace with a certain amount of self-doubt. I would describe myself as a really big introvert with a really big vision. And what that looked like often in my early career was having a lot that I could see and real strong opinions, and actually really good opinions often about what could happen or where a company could go, but either being too shy and timid to speak up and say anything about it, or when I did speak up, I would kind of hit everybody over the head with a hammer because I didn't actually know how to temper my expression in any way whatsoever. So either I'd sort of kill somebody in a meeting, or I wouldn't say anything at all. And as you can imagine, if you were my colleague at that time, you probably just hoped that I wouldn't say anything because it became complicated every time I would open my mouth. One of the things that I like to confess is that in the context of that moment in time, I really was a person who would either not take enough space or take up too much space in meetings. And I also, when I started to manage people, one of the first people that I ever managed quit within about 6 weeks because he felt that I was giving feedback that was constantly too harsh, or he wasn't hearing enough from me. So I really started out my career not great at a lot of things related to this theme. And over the course of time, what I found was that some of the practices I'm going to teach today made a big difference for me. I actually transitioned roles after about 10 years in that particular job. And during that process of transition, I found that I got a lot of feedback and was able to actually activate and actualize my own self-expression in new ways. So today, as was already mentioned, I am a leadership coach and trainer. I've been doing that in some form since about 2006. My first job actually was as well a training job at a boutique leadership firm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And very early on, I started working with women because I was fascinated by what it takes for someone who maybe doesn't look like everybody else on their team to advance in the workplace. I have therefore been training for a good long time, hopefully longer than it looks like I'm old enough to have been able to be training, and served in a lot of different kinds of organizations. And in a way, I share this to say, it's kind of a turnaround story, I would say, myself and my own teaching, my own speaking, my own self-expression, being able to be confident enough to run the kind of business that I run, being able to be confident and have enough presence to work with the types of leaders that I work with has really asked me to go deep inside and to do a lot of my own inner work to find the way forward as a strongly self-expressed woman. One thing I'd like to share that's not here on the slide is I have a personal and kind of a leadership declaration that I use sort of for my life and when I teach, which is that I'm a commitment to modeling powerful, centered, and deeply feminine leadership for the sake of a just and sustainable world. And so in a way, I make it my own personal mission to be not just a teacher of these practices, but really someone who walks her talk in the context of this work. So let's get into our content here. We know, as I mentioned at the beginning, that there is what people call a leadership cliff, that in some way, the level of leadership in most organizations, not everywhere anymore, certainly, but in many organizations, especially large organizations, tends to level off as we rise into as we look at more senior levels of leadership. And we don't necessarily know exactly how to solve for that. However, generally speaking, a lot of people who are in the training business, we're not 100% excellent at solving for it yet. Like we're doing some things, we're trying some things, but we don't exactly know why or what else is needed. Many companies will say that either they're not as effective as they could be at it and they're still trying to solve for it, or perhaps companies are really focusing on either ending bias or building technical skills. But what we've found at Guts and Grace is that it's not actually enough, because embodiment and these things that are connected to our presence, the way we self-express, some of the softer stuff, the stuff that's a little harder to measure, actually does make a big difference. What we found is that embodiment is a missing piece. And why we say that is because what we found is that early in our careers, most of us women in some ways tend to develop or make trade-offs. So we ignore our bodies, our intuitions, and we start to develop survival strategies that help us to get ahead in the workplace. But what it leads to, in a way, is underinvesting in our own deeper self-awareness, our real vision, our true gifts, and in fact, many aspects of our own self-expression. So we work with embodied presence and embodied practice as a way to start to unlock that in the leaders that we support. Let's see. So what we teach is fully embodied, or we sometimes will say full-bodied leadership. And what we mean by that is that your embodiment matters. The body may seem like an unusual ally. What does it mean if I'm working with my body? Well, it can mean many different things. It can mean that I take care of myself. It can mean that I practice, self-care or resilience, but it also has a lot to do with your presence, your body language, your habits of speech and action, the way that you vibe, the kind of energy that you radiate. These types of things really make a difference in terms of people taking you seriously, in terms of whether they'll trust you, in terms of whether they believe in you. So when we teach these types of practices, we actually look at 4 different keys. And the keys are as follows. Embody, this is really being able to use your body and energy in a way that serves others well, that serves yourself well, that keeps you from burnout, that keeps you resilient. Because how's your presence going to be if you're too tired, if you're too burned out, for example? The second key is empower. This is being able to take effective action when the going gets tough, to use your emotions productively, to be able to recenter when your mind is spinning. Because who's going to follow you or who's going to take you seriously when you're super worked up and everybody else needs you to be calm, present, and actually be able to wield some power in that context. Activate is the third key, and this is really about being in integrity and on purpose. So when you're off purpose, or you're some way out of sync with yourself, or you're misaligned with what you're saying and what you're doing, for example, there'll be a sense of incoherency or incongruency, which often leads to people not being willing to follow or not seeing you as someone who has presence and is inspiring. And then last but not least, the inspire key really is about communication, is about being able to express yourself in a way that people will understand, and also being able to both lead and to follow, to trade off those two energies so that people want to go with you and also feel like they're part of the conversation. We actually have a quiz on these, which I put the link to in the chat earlier, and we'll share with you after this talk. This is a way to go a little bit deeper and understand where is the place to look for you personally that might unlock the key to your next level of presence or self-expression as a leader. Today, we're going to work on 2 specific skills that are very closely related to executive presence. And so coming back to our initial topic, this idea of owning the room, what does that mean and how do we do it? Well, first and foremost, when we talk about owning the room, there's an important element of really being able to be coherent in your own self-expression. I feel, and the way that I feel to others and to myself matches. I'm not pushing too hard, or I'm not being too soft. Inside, I have a sense of not being like an imposter. There's a sense of confidence, and also that people will take you seriously and want to follow you. This often is related to not so much comparing to or trying to match others, but actually being more trusting and more loving of yourself and more self-connected. And there are many aspects of our presence that when we fully embraced or we're fully owning, we're able to actually be understood better and we're able to be felt more. So let me stop talking about it and give you a specific example. Here's a case study of a client where we were working with embodied presence. And what we found with this young woman, she was a highly technical scientist. She was a data scientist, but she was looking for a next level of promotion. And her boss wasn't entirely sure if she was leadership material. In her feedback, people would say that she was not so mature. And what would happen is when she would be faced with a moment of needing to express herself or bring a big idea forward, and she was someone who had a lot of big ideas, she would start to kind of collapse in her presence. So she would start to say, hey, I have this idea. Her boss would say, well, I have a question about that, or I'm not really sure about that. And her whole presence would begin to sink, to collapse. She would start to look away, perhaps. She might actually often she would say, like, her language would change. So instead of being excited, her tone of voice would start to shift. And literally sometimes she would start to get frustrated and she would say, whatever. And she would go, kind of like, never mind, would be the presence of it. After that, it kind of didn't matter what she said, because even if she went back in with the rest of the good idea, she'd already kind of checked out from the expression through her presence. And so what she found was that she would lose the room at that moment. Her ownership of the room, her presence would begin to deflate. And she wouldn't be able to stick in the conversation to get it through to the other side. What we worked on with Erica was actually being able to come back into herself in a physically present way, to reinflate, to feel again, to let go of the collapse and the whatever, but actually to be more fully embodied in herself. And through the practices, she was able to find that when she brought herself back into physical presence and emotional presence, she would often know the next thing to say. What was true about her is that she actually had a talent for building teams. She had a lot of insight about what it would take for them to unlock things in the business. And through these practices, she was not only able to get promoted, but she ended up being the person who opened a new geography and built a stellar team for the organization. She had to get through the doorway, though, of letting go of that collapse, of shifting her presence and coming back into the game when she got triggered or when her buttons got pushed, when people were challenging her. So this is one example of what it can look like. Here's another brief example. I worked with a woman a number of years ago who was the executive director of a nonprofit law firm. She was highly skilled. She had been 20 years in the organization. She was highly respected. But when it came to bringing a next level vision forward to the team, she would often doubt herself. What that looked like in her presence was that she would often stop breathing. She would get a little bit small. She would start to question. And then instead of saying the thing that she had meant to say, she would censor or change the subject or say a slightly smaller, less interesting version. Or sometimes she would actually just, give like an older example versus like the most relevant or current example. She actually had a really big vision for the firm, but when she stepped into this executive director role, she was kind of the number two to the person who had been there a long time. So she had to find her own way. And again, in Kara's particular case, it wasn't that she needed to learn new skills. It wasn't that she needed to think more strategically or get additional training. She actually just had to believe in herself. And what we found was, again, that physical presence practice enabled her to reconnect so that her brain would come back online and she would have the courage to actually risk saying what she thought and speaking the biggest version or the most kind of compelling version of what she actually had to say. So this was Kara. So in the context of these two stories, what was that key to unlock the person's real full self-expression and presence and being able to own the room was an understanding of what was happening in their bodies in the moment in those situations. So what I'd like to do is give you all a chance to play with this for yourself through an embodied practice right now. You can do this practice sitting down. I actually find that you get a little more access to, you wouldn't necessarily stand up, but if you're presenting, you would, but we get a little more access to the real sensations in your body if you stand up. So I'm going to go ahead and stand. And if you would like to stand, I invite you to join me. So we're going to do a version of a basic body-based centering practice. And we'll also do a practice of contrast, meaning what is it? That's the centering. And then what is it not? Where do I tend to go when I'm not centered or when I'm not in that mode? And just for fun, I've got a little visual here for us. So I invite you to stand up and just take a moment and shake anything out that you want to shake out. And let's do this to start. We're actually going to start with the contrast. So call to mind for a moment a situation, maybe a person that you have to speak to, or a room that you've spoken in, or a meeting that you tend to go to, or the last time you felt like you really weren't able to be in full presence or own the room. So think about that situation for a moment. And without acting or putting it on, it's not like we're not clowning, for example, but just if you can feel your body as you think about that situation and notice if you let yourself go there, what tends to happen in you in that moment. So it could be that you find that you start to lean forward. I'm going to really try to make this happen. Or maybe you find that you start to collapse or shut down or look away or pull back. Allow yourself to do what your body does under the pressure of, I need to have my voice heard. I have a point to make here. I've got to be seen, whatever that might be. So notice in my own self, for example, I tend to look down, my breathing gets a little slow, my stomach gets tight, I'm pulling in. So let your body do what it does. Often this is the thing that we want to avoid or try not to do. We're doing the opposite. We're going to go ahead and do it instead. And then if you are willing to turn the volume up on that, meaning exaggerate it maybe 2% or 3% more. So if you're already leaning forward and your body feels hard, lean a little more forward and get a little more hard. If you're already kind of collapsed or dropping in, go ahead and do that in your body and just notice what that's like. Cool. Okay, so let that go. You might say like kind of come back to neutral and just notice the difference. What changed, what shifted in you. And I'm going to teach you a few step body-based centering practice. We work with the 4 dimensions of the body, the length of the body, the width of the body, the depth, meaning the front to back of the body, and then we connect with something that is purposeful for us. So first, just bring your awareness into the sensations in your body and let yourself feel. This is me without anything extra. Maybe you feel anxious, maybe you feel calm, maybe you feel angry or happy, just notice. Maybe you feel hot or cold. Already just bringing your awareness starts to bring you into presence. If I'm thinking about something, I'm not so present. When I start to feel my body, when I locate myself here in space, I'm more present than I was before. Okay, let's come into center in relationship with our length, which is the top to bottom of us. So for a moment, feel the length of your spine and let yourself get a little bit taller. Maybe imagine some space between your vertebrae, becoming a bit more tall. Some of us shrink or collapse through our length. So notice what it's like to be as tall as you actually are. Own that. We call this the dignity line. I'm here, I have dignity, I belong. On your next breath, we're going to center in width, meaning let yourself expand out and take up more space side to side. So you can do that by just imagining an unfurling from your midline out or feeling out to the edges of your sides of your arms, your body. Awesome. And then we'll center front to back in depth. So feel the back of your body for a moment. Maybe lean a little bit back. Notice what that's like, and then lean a little forward and find the middle. And then imagine you're opening up some space behind you. So I'm taking up a little more space back and behind. And then I'm taking up a little more space forward. Feel your front and open through the front. So now we have length, we have width, and we have depth front to back. And then call to mind something that matters to you. In that meeting you go into with that person that you were thinking about before, what's your real goal? What do you care about? What matters? And as you connect with that, let that also shape your presence. Wow. It's not about whether they're right or I'm wrong. It's about that we want to create something beautiful here, for example. Whatever that is for you, try that on and let that be part of your mood. Let that be part of your expression. And notice the difference. Good, now one more time, just for, again, contrast, let yourself go back to that place that you went earlier. So under pressure, where your body tends to go. I push, I lean forward, I collapse, I pull back, I check out. Do the thing your body does and then feel the difference. Okay, here's where I can go. Maybe you're not breathing again. Maybe something's tight. Maybe your jaw is locked. And in a moment, we're going to go back to center, and I want you to track what changes and how you get there. So slowly coming back in. What do you have to shift to come back to? I'm here, I'm present, I'm expressed. Good. I like to say take a body snapshot, meaning take note what happened and take note, how does it feel now? What's this like? Because later when you go home, you can practice it again or you can bring it back into your next meeting. So if you've been standing with me, feel free to sit back down. Thank you for your practice. I invite you, if you would like, to take a moment and just take a couple of notes. If there's anything that you want to share in the chat, like here's how I feel, here's what's different, feel free. But also for your own self. Where did you go? What was it like? What were the body markers? What changed when you recentered? What changed when you recentered? As you take the notes, they can become your roadmap for coming back to this type of presence later. So what did we do? We did a basic centering practice where we were working with the different domains of center, our body awareness, our posture, what our body was doing. Also, your presence is related to your movement style or your pace. If you're walking around, am I slow? Am I fast? Maybe when I lose my center, I get faster. So then part of me for centering is slowing down. My emotions and my mood, we work with the mood of whatever was on purpose for me. It also relates to your language, your thoughts, your mindset, and then your energy and presence. So these are all aspects of what we might want to pay attention to or shift or actually work with in some way to be able to express ourselves with more presence. One of the things that can happen when we experience imposter syndrome is that there's a mismatch between what's happening inside of us, or what our bodies are doing, or what our presence is doing, and what we're trying to say or what we're trying to express. So for example, I'm saying, I feel angry, but actually I'm smiling. And then somehow that mismatch actually has us feel like we're not fully coherent with ourselves, and other people will read us that way as well. So if I'm giving a very fierce presentation at work, but I'm doing it in kind of a lighthearted way, that'll start to come across as less presence. Okay, so what we find is that leaders who can actually work with their bodies in this way, who know how to guide their embodiment, so they're showing up and doing things in the right way at the right time, are the ones who are changing the game. As you start to master this skill, you're upgrading your operating system, and this is really where the practice becomes interesting. I'm going to skip this slide for now, just for time. But we also have, of course, not just how we be, which is a part of our presence, but also what we say. So is what I say part of owning the room? 100%. When it comes to communication, there are a lot of different kinds of skills you could learn, but often there's just one thing or one thing underneath all of that that can change the way you're self-expressing. That may be different for everybody in this room, but I wanted to bring one more example and one more communication tool, which is what we'll practice when we come into our breakouts. So I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to it now. So here's another client example. We'll call her Meredith, names changed to protect the innocent. You may see some of yourself inside of this example, or maybe she's very different than you. So when Meredith was trying to level up in her leadership, she was getting feedback that she was not strategic, but also that she wasn't empathic enough. She actually was both empathic and strategic, and she was a very insightful leader, let's say. My assessment was that she had a lot of potential to move up in her organization, but she had the kind of prior programming, if you will. Her habit was that she was really driven to succeed and to prove herself because of the fact she was one of the only women in the industry. She tended to move fast. She pushed hard. She talked a lot. She blew by people on her way to get things done. And inside of that, she wasn't necessarily always showing her strategic or her empathic side. Now, she also had very fierce opinions about things in the organization. And what she was worried about was that if I express those things, am I going to be seen as a bully? Am I going to be seen as pushing too hard? I'm already getting feedback that I'm not empathic. And yet, when she wasn't clear, people couldn't get the depth and the gravity of what she actually had to offer to the organization. So she found herself in a little bit of a conundrum. What do? I feel like there's something to say here. I have a vision, I can move things forward. And yet, if I'm direct, if I push, if I express myself, people are going to feel steamrolled. They're already feeling that way. But so this was her experience in trying to grapple with herself and also grapple with others in trying to get to her next level. What we actually found is that one particular tool, being able to directly and succinctly state her opinion about something, refining this practice made a huge difference. And I wanted to offer this tool to you all because for many, many of us, the tendency to either sugarcoat or to be quote unquote too direct can be part of the old paradigm of struggling with presence and not fully owning the room. So how much to say? In what way do I say it? Do I say it directly? Do I give a little bit of extra information around it, et cetera, et cetera? So the practice that I want to teach you all is called a direct assessment. What's an assessment? An assessment is your judgment or your belief or your opinion about something, a person, a situation, what's happening in this meeting, where we need to go as an organization, but it's not a fact, right? It's your opinion about something. And often when we're really coming into our full presence and our full ownership of our self-expression, we will not speak this or not speak it clearly. And then in some way, the gravity of what we may have to offer can get lost. So learning to give a direct assessment puts your stake in the ground. It actually is part of you being able to take a stand, to take ownership of what matters to you, to be able to guide folks. And becoming skillful at doing it can be the difference between either steamrolling or sugarcoating, or being having people feel sort of too pushed, or you not feel heard at all. So how do you give an assessment? The actual assessment itself is quite simple. It's simply the part where you say, this is what my opinion is. This is what my assessment is about something. So for example, I walk into a meeting and I say, my assessment is that we're not spending our time on the right things right now. Or I'm sitting with one of my direct reports and I say, my assessment is that you're very close to the next level of promotion, but there are some things you need to do to be able to get there. My assessment is that we're actually not on the same page in this conversation, and we might need to pause and reset. Just the thing that is what you're garnering from the situation, the thing that is where you stand about it, that does put a stake in the ground in some way. Now, in the conversation, there are several other things that you might want or need to do in addition, but often the mischief happens because we don't say our assessment, or we only say our assessment and don't do any of these other things. So we're going to have a chance to actually practice giving and expressing an assessment with presence in our breakouts shortly. But I want to walk you through some of the puzzle pieces to be able to get there. So first of all, if you're going to give the assessment, you can use these 4 puzzle pieces. The assessment is the direct thing that you think, believe, or judge in a short sentence. So if I take Meredith's example that I just shared with you a moment ago, there was a moment in her career where she walked into her next meeting with her boss, her performance review, to talk about where she was going in the organization. And essentially she said something like this: my assessment is that I could be doing your job someday. It was a bold move. I'm not saying everyone should make that kind of assessment or speak something that clearly, but what she could have done was, here's all the evidence, here's everything that I have accomplished in my career, and never really say what she believed or what she wanted. She, of course, then went on to say some of those other things, but being able to name that very specifically, and her boss being able to go, I agree with you, or I don't agree with you, and here's why, opened a whole world of conversation that ultimately over time has led to her becoming the CEO of a subsidiary of the business, and her boss, who was actually one of the founders of the organization, being in conversations about her being one of their potential successors. So it actually opened the door to that coming to fruition. It was simple, it was clear, it was direct. The grounding would be the facts. So she might have then gone on to say, here's why I think that. I've accomplished X. I've been able to do these things. I've served you all in this way. Here's the skill set that I have, for example, right? But she could say all those things and not give the direct assessment. And then in other kinds of conversations, there might be like a naming of impact or naming of consequences. Let's say you're giving somebody feedback. Here's my assessment of you. Here's the grounding that I have, or the facts of why I say that. And then here are some of the different consequences that that's having on the team, or maybe the positive consequences that your behavior has been having on the team, and so on. And then last but not least, you might have a request, or you might have some coaching. You might want to say, for example, here's what I'd like you to try on next, for example. So in Meredith's case, she may have said, my assessment is I could be in your job someday. Here's some of the facts about what I've achieved, my skill set. My request is, can we continue an ongoing conversation about it? And can you give me feedback every couple of months so that I can keep growing and improving and being able to work toward that goal, for example, right? Any one of these pieces is an interesting part of a conversation. When you know how to wield all 4 of them, and specifically when you can give a clear, direct assessment, you're often able to move something forward in a more comprehensive way in a conversation without sugarcoating and also without being too pushy. So in Meredith's particular case, she was actually able to get farther with her communication when she finally just named her direct assessment versus the more pushy type of communication she was giving before that didn't actually name it cleanly, for example. Okay, so I want to give you all a couple of minutes to get ready to practice. Shortly, as you know, we're going to go into breakouts. And in the breakout, you'll have a chance to both practice being centered, coming into your full presence, but also being in a conversation, in a role play. So take a moment, if you have a journal or a piece of paper, go ahead and grab your notebook and ask yourself this question: where could I apply this assessments practice back in my life? Is there a real relationship, meeting, project, or situation where I actually would like to give some feedback or speak my real opinion about something or name what's happening in the context of a project that we're working on, or give some advice, for example. So first, just note for yourself, what's the situation, the project, the meeting, like I say, what's the dojo, basically a place of practice? What's the place you want to apply this tool right now? Once you've decided, so it doesn't have to be the perfect choice, just pick something to work with. But if there's something real or relevant to you, pick the thing that's real or relevant to you right now. And then the second question is, what's the real topic? What is the thing that you want to express something about? Maybe it's something about selling your vision or giving feedback. Maybe you want to ask for a promotion or a raise. What's the real content of the conversation? And you can also note, what's the format? Is it a one-on-one with my supervisor or my direct report about this? Is it more like a large group presentation? And then lastly, what's the gist of what you need to say? If you were to boil it down to one assessment, one direct naming of something, that's your opinion, that's what you see, what you feel is true, that's part of that whole conversation you want to have, what would that be? Okay. As I mentioned, in a minute or two, we're going to go into some practice. I want to give you an opportunity, if you would like. I'm going back one slide. It may be helpful to reference this during the practice, so please feel free to take a screenshot of this slide, the assessment, the facts, the impact, and the coaching, because when you're in your practice, you may want to hit these 4 points as part of your practice. So feel free to take a screenshot or write down those four words: assessment, grounding or facts, impact, and then coaching, recommendation, request. All right. And so in a moment, I'm going to transition back to Pam. We're going to go into breakouts. Let me just explain to you what we're going to do in our breakouts as a practice. So first of all, when you arrive in your breakout, most likely there'll be 3 people or possibly 2 people. And in the breakout, you can both take 5 seconds or 10 seconds just to center yourself. Come into presence, find yourself there. We've done a length, width, and depth practice. You can come back to that. And then you'll have a minute just to share with your partners anything you want briefly. What are you learning about presence? But specifically, what's the topic and the role play that you want to do that you just prepared? Then you'll have about 3 minutes to practice. So you'll get to start the conversation. You won't have time to say everything, but maybe you give the assessment, you speak a little bit of the grounding, a little bit of the coaching, or something about the impact. You just try it on. Try on using this tool of assessment in relation to something that's real and relevant for you. I've just shown you the slide. This is the formula. If you don't do it perfectly, if you don't hit all the points, it doesn't matter, but try it on. And then your partner can give, if for about a minute at the end of that, a couple of reflections. What did they notice? What went well? Maybe they give a reflection on your presence and what worked in your presence. Maybe they give a reflection on the kinds of words that you used or how it came across, and you get to receive. Of course, their feedback is also an assessment. It's not true or false. You don't have to take it personally. You can just take it or leave it. But whoever's offering that reflection, take an intention to uplift this person and to help them to grow. We're all in this here both to get to know each other and also to grow. We will be in a 15-minute breakout, I believe. We'll have a couple of time markers so you can trade roles. One person goes for about 5 minutes, another person will go, and then the last person will go. And once that's all done, we'll come back and we'll debrief and we'll have some time for Q&A. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope that you had an opportunity to have a juicy conversation, maybe some practice. I know sometimes we all do our practice and our homework, and sometimes we just talk about what we, have in common or whatever. So I'm sure many different things happened during the breakout, all of which were probably valuable. If you did the practice, I'd love to hear some reflections in the chat. What are your takeaways? What did you realize? What did you get? And if anybody wants to, is it okay, Pam, if anyone wants to come off of mute and just share a quick reflection?
It would be lovely, yes.
Okay, if anybody would like to, we'd love to hear from you. What did you learn? How did it go? What did you practice? Anybody willing to share a takeaway?
Yeah, I can share a takeaway. I was talking to Josie D, and as I was in my dojo, trying to explain to my manager the impact of these items, I realized that yes, it is a very large impact on myself, but the way that I might be able to communicate this and get buy-in is being able to convey the overall impact to the company, the organization, my role, rather than just saying me, which yes, I'm advocating for myself, but being able to take that eagle eye view and say, this is more than just me. This is why I'm raising this. So super insightful, very, very helpful.
Beautiful, super powerful. It's interesting when it comes to that type of a advocacy. It's a little bit like what's your build, which way do you tend to go, and then what's right for the conversation, right? Because in some cases, I would say, if you're like you realize, right? If I'm realizing that it's me, and if I took the eagle eye view, that might have more power, you're probably right. And then I wouldn't go like that's the blanket right answer. For some folks, they'll always be taking the eagle eye and never just say the thing for them. And actually that might have more power. So it's like calibration of my own defaults plus what might really open something in the moment. Thanks for sharing. Beautiful reflection. Is there another person who might want to share a quick reflection? What did you practice? What did you learn?
I can.
Please.
I think one of the things that Sarah, who's my colleague at First Solar, who I was lucky enough to be paired with, one of the things that I, in realization is really important is kind of the words you choose and the tone in which you convey them, so as not to be labeled, and excuse my language, the bitch of the situation. If you're too aggressive, then you run that risk of doing it, even if you're just speaking to facts and points. It can be challenging, so it's something we have to think about and are cognizant of when we are going into a meeting or we are presenting in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, somebody, I wasn't able to see the chat when I was presenting, but somebody said she didn't bury the lead, and I'm assuming that was probably about when Meredith said what she said to her boss. But in a way, if you tend to get feedback that is on the more aggressive or on the more bitch side, it can be like maybe often you're giving all the facts, but you are bearing the lead a little bit, and then they're feeling the aggression or they're feeling the energy of what you have to say, but almost like bracing themselves for the point. And actually in Mary's particular case and in other folks that I coach, sometimes if you're just naming the thing, but with as little charge as possible, more like, can I have a cup of tea? But you're actually saying and not bearing the lead, it disarms people a little bit because they're not waiting for the shoe to fall, if that makes sense. And then you're giving the facts once they've already kind of heard the worst news or heard the thing that they may be afraid to hear. A lot of communication in presence is, it's not that this is your responsibility, but like, are you putting someone else on the defensive, or are they bracing for what's going to come at them with you? Or actually, are they feeling settled because they're not making something up, or they're not reading an incoherency, or they're not waiting in some way? And that can make a real difference if that tends to be your archetype, if you will.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I think one of the things I've learned over time really was sometimes it can be more effective to ask a question
That too.
than make a statement to disarm people and kind of allow their opinion to be heard first, or even if you know the answer or you think you know the answer type of thing. It's all of those mitigating factors, like you make a deposit before withdrawal type of thing.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we just hear one more quick response on the practice, either the actual breakout practice, or if there's anything anyone wants to share about their experience with the centering practice, or maybe you practice some centering in your breakout. Any other? Please, Agneta.
Okay. Yes. So, so I was thinking this. We had a good conversation about the assessment, and I really liked it. It's kind of like giving a conclusion up front, telling people what they should think, and then doing the details. And as I work with founders, I try to make sure that the in the pitch deck that the heading is a conclusion. So you kind of tell people what they should think, and then you provide the details. So I saw some correlation there, and I was thinking that's a good way of thinking about it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. Also, I probably should have said this, and it might be really obvious, but in case it's not, when you give a direct assessment, the other most important thing is that you're okay that you're not right. Like, it is your opinion, it's not the fact. And so it can be useful and disarming and a good conversation opener and all of those things, unless you still act as if you're the only one that's right in the conversation. So the more you can practice doing all of that, what we just practiced, with the detachment and willingness to be exploratory and also hear the other side, the more powerful the conversation can be. I get the impression that you know that and you're already practicing it, but I'm just thinking that based on what you said. Okay, Pam, I know that we're going to do a little more broad Q&A. Do you want to go ahead and open us up for that?
Yes, absolutely. So, we'll just have people type in the chat if you've got a question, or open your microphone, raise your hand. And we've got about 4 minutes to do the Q&A, and then we'll move to WCS. I'll have some closing remarks, and then we'll have Sarah return and provide some WCS closing comments. And we should be closing out in at the appointed time. So we've got 4 minutes to take any burning questions. Kelly's asking, can you tell us your statement again? Your vision that you shared at the beginning.
Oh, my
Leanne.
declaration.
Yes,
This one, I'm a commitment. I'm a commitment to modeling powerful, centered, and deeply feminine leadership for the sake of a just and sustainable world. And that actually came through. I both run Guts and Grace. I also teach for the Strozzi Institute Embodied Leadership School as one of their lead teachers, and that's one of the Strozzi Institute tools. When I teach it in Guts and Grace, I call it a North Star. It's basically a one-sentence statement that can galvanize you. So often if we do a basic centering practice, the last thing that we'll do, I work with my length, my width, my depth, and then I go, what's my declaration? And I remind myself of that and get in the vibe of that before teaching, speaking, going into a meeting, something. It can help us. Sometimes I'll say, like, it helps us get bigger than the challenge. Like, oh, there's a lot that's going to come at me, or maybe I'm scared, or I know this is going to be contentious, or it's hard to bring my voice forward, but this is what I stand for. And that's part of what I'm galvanizing around in my presence.
We have a request to get the 2 slides with the dojo and the direct assessment. So Leanne, you can let us, if you want those shared, we'll be glad to provide that in the, people would like to receive those after the program, not look at them. They're asking for them to be shared afterwards.
We'll unshare them.
Okay. Yeah. And so any tips for getting the stage back, so to speak? Sandra's asking, as in you're presenting and talking and someone disrespectfully takes the stage from you, talks over you. That's a common one. What do you think, Leanne? How do you get the stage back?
Sandra, are you mean more like in a meeting, or like you're actually presenting and you are?
It could be either. It's happened to me as like presenting at like an academic conference, or like just in a meeting, and there's like a team member that I know is kind of, we don't get along that well. So, and with a male voice and being loud, they can definitely drown you out, or you sound like an idiot trying to drown them out. Like,
Yeah. Well,
I got advice for this one.
Maybe we should hear from Sarah. I have a couple ideas. Sarah, do you want to speak first?
Well, I've had this situation happen with women and men, and I was a teacher in my previous life. And so, kids have a tendency of doing this too. And so I've had this situation happen in a group full of men in facilities and with chief engineers. And I basically was just like, hey, I wasn't finished talking, and I will wait for you to stop. And just, it's like, for me, it was a very direct approach because I felt disrespected. I wasn't being confrontational, but at the same time, I made it very clear that I was not going to allow someone to do that to me. And I also expressed to them that it was my time to talk, and that when I was finished, that they can talk. And sometimes it might seem like, whoa, you're coming off crazy. But in actuality, are you? In actuality, are you coming off crazy? No. All you're doing is being respectful and holding your boundary and respecting your space. So that was my practice with men. And let me tell you, every single guy in the room after the meeting said thank you for doing that, because they didn't like that guy, and nobody ever does anything. So it's kind of funny how things like that happen. So I know we only got 5 more minutes, so we'll let the
Yeah,
team-
actually,
I'll just add a couple things. One, Sarah has a really beautifully embodied boundary. Like, that's something I really admire about you, Sarah, and your presence. So I'm glad that you answered, actually, because it's a great answer. I would say, I would add, as it's happening, center yourself. Because whatever happens and comes out of your mouth after that, if it's mostly from trigger, it's going to come across as mostly from trigger. I had an experience of a really challenging question when facilitating a group from a very senior, I don't know, intense male colleague on a team. And I waited, like I paused, like I paused for a minute, and I waited long enough that I got my ground back, and then was able to come in a little similarly to what Sarah said. In some cases, I do a little more Aikido, like I actually ask them a question and give them a little bit more of a moment to share, and then Aikido it back to where I was going. But in any case, that moment of centering can really make a difference for you to have your own back as you come back in.
so thank you. We're really running short on time here. Boy, I think we could talk for another hour with Leanne. I want to invite everyone to turn their cameras back on, because Kirpa would like to take a group photo for, for our sharing and social media and the article that's being written for. There'll be a blog post from WCS on today's program summarizing it. So if you all put your cameras back on, Kirpa, let us know when you're ready, and then I'll make some closing remarks and turn it to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Pam. Well, I'll give everyone a few seconds because we have quite a few people on this. I'll take 2 screenshots. So on the count of 3, happy International Women's Day. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more, guys. Thank you for your patience. 1, 2, 3, happy International Women's Day. Awesome, beautiful smiles all around, and thank you so much.
Okay, so let's give Leanne a round of applause for a learning experience. And we celebrate you and appreciate you. And as we come to the close of our WCS Own the Room Mastering and the Executive Presence workshop, I want to take a brief moment to reflect on the journey we've embarked on today. We've delved into this. We're feeling inspired, empowered, and elevated. And during our time together, really, we learned about the confidence, the gravitas, and the authenticity that commands attention and respect in any room. And we've confronted these unique challenges, we've equipped ourselves, and we've celebrated the power and potential that each and every one of you holds within. So as we leave, I want to leave you with a reminder that you're capable of greatness beyond measure. You have the talent, the drive, and determination to reach the pinnacle of success in your careers. We're so proud of each of you, and we can't wait to celebrate continuing our efforts with WCS Professional Development Programming, navigate the triumphs, then the challenges, know that your voice matters, your presence matters, and your contributions matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. You can hear the emotion in these last 2 minutes. And I just want to emphasize a couple things with everyone in this room today. That every single one of you that showed up today on International Women's Day, you put yourself first today. You set yourself up to win, not just today, but for the future. And for those of you that are on the call and you want to continue to get support in this area, please connect with myself, Pam, and Leanne on LinkedIn. We're here to support every single person on this call through their executive career or their career in general. And with that being said, if you signed up for this workshop today and you're not a member of Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, and you decide to sign up and become a member, we will comp you for today's event, and it will be part of your, membership. So just know, the reason why I say this is because we have an amazing lineup. I shared with you at the beginning of the other workshops that we have slated for this year. So with that being said, I just want to close this meeting out and thank everyone for being present, making yourself vulnerable today, and sharing with us today. And I want everybody to continue to celebrate International Women's Day, but just know every day at WCS is International Women's Day. Have a great Friday, everyone. Thank you.